ética,
ethics,
governança,
governance,
longo prazo.
and long term.
Esse é o jeito Itaúsa.
This is the Itaúsa way of investing. Our portfolio is made of companies that make Brazil better.
Mas nada disso.
But none of that is from overnight.
Nossos valores são
Our values are the base so we can get to solid results and we can build legacies.
Investimos no potencial.
We invest in the potential of the companies and the people.
Ao lado de nossos parceiros,
And on the side of our partners and collaborators, we unite strengths and multiply actions, and we grow along with our invested companies.
somos assim.
We are just like that. We believe that the investment is the responsible investment is the right path forward. In this journey, sustainability is the starting point and ending point. Connecting results, impacts, we act on the present to influence the future. Itaúsa,
Valores em ação.
values in action.
Bom dia. Olá,
Good morning.
eu sou a Juliana Rosa.
I am Juliana Rosa, and I'm very happy with you
Mais uma edição
to open another
Itaúsa.
Panorama Itaúsa.
E esse ano a gente
And
começa
this year we start in a special way, directly from the headquarters of Itaúsa
Paulista.
in the heart of Paulista Avenue.
2025 é um
2025 is a very important year where Itaúsa celebrates 50 years of history. And for this significant date, we are going beyond the doors and we're going to get to know Itaúsa as never before. This is an opportunity to get to see how the company places its values in action.
Agora sim, sejam todos muito
Now,
bem-vindos.
welcome once again
Panorama Itaúsa.
to Panorama Itaúsa 2025. Itaúsa prepared a morning that is full of relevant content with a lot of transparency. And before we continue, the transmission has simultaneous translation into English.
De Libras. Bom, como vocês notaram, o Panorama
As you've noticed, Panorama Itaúsa has a more modern scenario,
E o mais importante,
and most important,
hoje, ele acontece dentro
the
e mais uma
event takes place in-house, and I am very happy to take part of this event by Alfredo Setúbal, the President of Investor Relations of Itaúsa. Alfredo, welcome.
Obrigado,
Tudo
Juliana.
bem?
Tudo ótimo. Bom ter você aqui de novo
Great to have you here with us
nesse panorama tão
in this panorama that is so special for us. 50 years,
É isso aí. Muito especial
very special.
essa edição do Panorama.
Our edition of Panorama, and we
Primeira vez dentro do nosso
wanted to do it in-house
multiuso.
for the first time. In our multi-use environment, we have the scenario,
E vamos manter
and we're going to keep
transparência, falar
the transparency. We're going to discuss our present, our future, and let's celebrate our story. Let's tell a little bit of our story.
Enfim, acho que vamos ter evento bem
I
bacana.
think it's going to be a very nice event. Well, I was joking that it seems like we are floating in heaven, blue and white, in the clouds. It's our new brand as well.
Chique demais, né?
Very nice.
A nossa logomarca para
We changed the logo to celebrate the 50 years, more modern, more
refletir melhor o momento.
current, and it reflects the moment of Itaúsa. We hope that you take part in this live, submitting questions, submitting messages. You can get it through the chat of the platform or using the hashtag Panorama Itaúsa 2025. And throughout the event, we're going to bring to Alfredo and other invitees of Panorama the questions asked by you. We're going to collate a few of the most important and the most relevant. Now, we have a lot of people, and we're going to discuss with Alfredo important numbers and important names in this portfolio, in this special edition. We're going to explore 4 attributes that were always present in the trajectory of Itaúsa: governance, solidity, association, and sustainability. You're going to understand how the holding influences the portfolio so that these values are also present in the invested companies. That's why soon we're going to have Milton Maluri, CEO of Itaú Unibanco, Miguel Cerda, CEO of Motiva, Radamés Kassab, he is the CEO of Egea, and Pedro Turqueto, CEO of Copa Energia. Besides him, we're going to have the participation of Frederico Pascovich, he is the investor director of and Vicente Assis, he is an independent board member of Itaúsa. So before we start the call and the talk, I'd like to celebrate the 50 years. This is a very special panorama. And we will show you an expose that Itaúsa assembled. I was here a few days ago, and Alfredo was my guide. And we did this walk, and we showed this issue, which is very important, how in practice Itaúsa transforms values in action and gives support to everything that we're going to discuss in Panorama. Now, I saw that you were, for you, it must be very emotional to go through this story. It's a very nice story to be able to share a part of it in our video and in our values, the values of the controlling families. That's why we want to bring to the invested company so we can grow Brazil and transform Brazil. It's one of our roles. It's one of the things that we try to do every investment that is done. And this is going to give you some proof to be able to see how the expose is. Let's see it. So, we're going to visit the expose of 50 years of Itaúsa. Now I have him as a guide, so you can present to us and this story, Alfredo. Thank you, Juliana, for being with us. It is an important moment for Itaúsa. So let's take a course through the exhibition. Now, this exhibit is chronologic, and we want to show the main values and how the companies started. Yeah, it's by axis, chronologically. So we have a part with legacies that we build the values of Itaúsa, the controlling families. It's an association. We always had partners in all the companies. So it's an important part. The results, which are very important, of course. This makes the company grow and have the development. And in the end, the last block, we're going to talk about influence in the future and what do we do besides the activities, financial and entrepreneurial activities. Alfredo tells me that there is an important picture that highlights the entrepreneurship spirit and the visionary onlook. Well, the group was founded by Alfredo Gigesol Sarenho. He had, in the 1910s, he was working with the textiles in 1920, and he always had a life of being an entrepreneur. He was the founder of the Federal Banco Itaú, which was Banco Itaú. He founded Duratex, which today is Dexco, and several participations that he had. So now we get to the two people that Alfredo already discussed that were fundamental in this story, Teodoro Vilela and Olavo Setúbal. If you can tell us about their story. So my dad, he was the nephew of Alfredo Gigi. He studied engineering, and he founded DECA. And then he was working with his business. There was a lot of relationship with his uncle. He was a person of reference for him. And in 1958, so 12 years after he founded DECA, my uncle called him to work at Duratex. In 1959, my uncle, he died in 61. And he gave the command of the bank to Teodoro Vilela and my dad, that he became the general director. And the two started to work together, and they worked together for decades. My dad was more executive. Eudoro was more strategic. So they divided the space. They had a lot of trust amongst them. That was a big factor of growth of the group. Two important figures. And an important part because it's building legacy. So that's what the families did to preserve and being connected, the companies, the values of ethics, of growth, solidity, of a good governance. So here is the essence of Itaúsa. Yes, here it is. And talking about the origin of Itaúsa, the picture that we're going to see now is of the first headquarters. Yeah, this is the origin, so to speak, of the group in its first moment, when we had the first movement of fusion of Itaú, that was the purchase of União Comercial Bank by Itaú. And then Itaúsa is born. Because at the time, the legislation didn't allow two investment banks. So Banco Itaú Investments became Itaúsa. And now we get to a decisive moment, which is the fusions and the acquisitions that transformed Itaú in one of the biggest banks of the country and impacted millions of Brazilians. And it starts in Itaú, it starts in 1995, 30 years ago, with the purchase of the French bank, the first bank that was privatized, Banerj. Then we bought Benji and Minas Gerais, Banestado from Paraná, the bank of the state of Goiás. In 2002, Itaú purchases BBA. And then there is a big fusion of Itaú and Unibanco, a big transformation of the bank from the cultural standpoint of people. And here, in this corridor, we see another example of association and fusion and acquisition in the sector of construction materials. In 2009, we did a fusion of Duratex with Zatipel that complemented the production of panels, and it turned it into a big company. And in this association character with the families, for the Sabel family. And here, there is a timeline of the investments. This timeline that really shows how over the last years, you had this vocation of growing together, building legacies. We started to do investments in the sector, industry, services, and infrastructure to create a portfolio that is a portfolio that is relevant of important companies in Brazil that form a portfolio that is important for Itaúsa. So here, the section, so you have shareholders, taxes, investments. It's what you say, the result that impacts. Today, Itaúsa has 920,000 direct shareholders. It's the biggest company with with the numbers of shareholders in B3. So that motivates us a lot, which is nice to see the recognition of having so many people interested in investing with us and believing in our values, our beliefs, and our thesis. And Alfredo, now we're going to get to a part of the panel that shows how you're following up with us the construction with a lot of responsibility, social environmental. In 2023, because of the size of Itaúsa, the identity that it created all throughout the years, we understood that it would be important to have its own project and not just the projects that we support through the invested companies. So we constituted the Itaúsa Institute, and it's focused in sustainability, in environment, and one thing that is very important in Brazil that we lack, which is economy productivity. And in this special year, Itaúsa celebrates 50 years. There is news in terms of visual identity of the company. In the 50 years, we revisited our brand. We thought that the old brand had solidity, but it didn't really reflect the capacity of the group to adapt to the political, economical, social circumstances of Brazil. So we did a new brand. So we're getting at the end of the exhibition, and we scheduled a meeting with Viviane Perinotto. She's the head of communication of Itaúsa. And she was facing the rebranding. And she's heading that. Well, this rebranding was only possible because there is a consistent trajectory of 50 years. And I believe that we could translate in language and identity what differentiates us and also what we lived all throughout these years. Solidity, consistency in the results, association in the investments, the impact in the transformation of Brazil that you commented, sustainability with an outlook for the future. To me, that's the synthesis of a Brazilian trajectory of value and that we project for the next 50 years. Very interesting. This identity somehow brings a synthesis of the exposition. And this is what we express when we say that we get our values in action. It's right about that. The rebranding is not just a visual change, but a repositioning that reconnects our legacy to the future. And it shows Itaúsa as a holding to prepare for the new cycles of growth, close to 1 million shareholders, and committed to have a positive impact for the society. This rebranding, which was an intense work, we have this values in action, which is a joke that we wanted to say. We talked about the values of the company, but at the same time, it's the values of our shares, of our results, action that gives a sense of movement, everything that we do. At the same time, we say to the shareholders, we are very happy to synthesize in values in action. It's very clear the trajectory of Itaúsa, and it's a lot of trajectory. And everything that you've seen thus far, that became a book, a very big book. Everybody is going to have one of those. The book has been very successful. We've received a few demands, and we could think about, gifting a few of the people that follow this Panorama Itaúsa with this book. I am certain that after this trip through Panorama Itaúsa, you're going to see how everything that we're going to say now will make even more sense. Let's talk about getting dreams in action. of beginnings that push us at the same time, of getting the legacy in action, of solidity and responsibility that guides us. Let's talk about connections, of ethics and bonds that we build and multiply the impact, of building the future in action. And we cannot talk about the future without talking about our history. Always invested in shares that transform the lives of people and Brazil. Because of all that, to talk about the history is to talk about Itaúsa. Evolution is to talk about Itaúsa. Future is to talk about Itaúsa. For 50 years, getting the values in action. Well, everything is nice, and we hope that you can visit the website that Itaúsa prepared, specifically the website to share these memories that are here at the exhibition. The link is on the screen. And through the walk, I said that they had to distribute the book for everyone, so now I let Alfredo and Viviane in a situation that, well, Alfredo wants to give the book to everyone. So we decided here that we're going to gift the book about the 50 years of Itaúsa, the first 200 people that answer the Q&A at the end of the event. So take part. The book is nice. It's beautiful and it has the weight of history in it. And the idea came up at that time. We wanted to give the book to the 200 people that will answer the questionnaire at the end of the event. For us, it's very important, the response, because it gives us feedback, what is good, what is bad, and what we need to improve. Several details of the exhibition are very interesting, and you will understand how Itaúsa can, throughout the years, continue to evolve. I really like the details that I learned there, that Itaú is the name of a city in Minas Gerais. It wasn't the name of the bank. No, it was the federal bank. Itaú was a bank that was fused, we show in the video, and it was the final brand in the 1970s. So all of that we see shows our capacity at Itaúsa, our companies and banks, to adapt to several political situations, economic situations of Brazil that we went through. Itaú is a big winner, and it's the biggest bank in the country. It's very modern. So our capacity to reinvent in the bank and the other companies will bring us here. We have to be proud because the exhibition is there. They have to know that history, and it's very evident that the governance was always present. It's governance that guarantees consistency and credibility to grow in partnership, to generate impact and generate the future. Governance is a structure or attitude. Let's talk about it. At Itaúsa, it's structure with attitude, because you need solid bases and you have to get them in practice, working in transparency, ethics, and responsibility every day at every level. And that way we strengthen business and we multiply the impact. Do you want to talk about governance? We do. Let's get the invitation of Fernanda Caramuru, and we're going to talk about governance, and this is the first theme, so we can talk about the values of this fundamental agency, of this agenda of governance and how it's evolving. I think that governance, in the case of Itaúsa, is our main pillar. From it, we have everything around. We have a solid governance in the holding, We try to get the solid governance to our invested companies, especially those that are non-negotiated at B3. We have 3 big companies that are non-listed, so we try to get the best practices of governance, because with a good governance, you can grow more, you can manage the risks better, you have a capacity of attracting talents and being more disciplined in the capital allocation. So this is a pillar that we do not forego, and we try to work strongly. At the level of the holding, we have a board of directors of 10 members. 5 are non-connected to the family, they're independent. We have several committees that work with the board of directors, and these committees are coordinated by the independent board members, so they have autonomy to talk to the administrators and to help with the construction. Several committees at the level of the board of directors. We have a governance that is very solid, and the reputational risk, and this is key, we're a holding, we take part on big companies in Brazil, and we have 920,000 shareholders, so our responsibility is very big. Almost 1 million investors. And talking about governance and commitment, we're going to bring Ricardo Tadeu Martins. He's the president of ABIMAC, the president of the Association of Investment Professionals in Brazil. Hello, everyone, executives, analysts, investors, and all the audience of Panorama Itaúsa 2025. I'm Ricardo Martins. I'm the executive president of ABIMAC Brazil. And I am here once again to do the delivery of the Emerald Seal of 25 years to recognize your commitment with the transparency and the frequent contact with analysts and shareholders. And in the 50 years of the history of Itaúsa, the last 25 were marked by presentations in partnership with ABIMAC Brazil. And that's translated by an independent forum of mutual trust in the market. Congratulations and a great event. Thank you. Congratulations. Another seal of ABIMAC, and it represents a lot because it shows our commitment with transparency, governance. We have people that purchase the shares in the stock exchange because they wanted to do so, and that brings us that need, that obligation, a good obligation of being transparent, of talking to the market. We've used the social networks to communicate with the shareholders. Our videos are seen by millions of people. The impact is enormous. So it's a responsibility that we try to, through the social networks, to keep this contact very close to the shareholders. And this recognition of 25 years of non-stop meetings of Itaúsa shows our commitment. So we talk about governance. Let's bring another attribute that is important, which is solidity, an attribute that we are going to get to know about it now. Solidity. It's about creating value or consistency. Let's talk about it. Actually, at Itaúsa, it's about both. With a vision of long-term, the economic discipline and responsibility, we transform challenges and opportunities, generating solid and perennial results. And let's continue. Yes, Priscila, talking about solidity, which is a characteristic that is part of the history of Itaúsa. And it's just a solid and consistent company can attract and keep almost 1 million investors. And so we're going to talk about the results, solid results, perennial, that Priscila mentioned. So, the history of Itaúsa is of success. Our shares are valued in the It's one of the most valued over the last 30 years. It's a consistent result of Itaú Unibanco, our main participation, but also in the conglomerate of companies that we start to invest over the last 10 years. Validity comes from governance, results that confirm this. We have a practice of distributing all the dividends and yields that we receive to our shareholders, and this makes Itaúsa a big payment of dividends, of payouts, and this explains all the investors at B3, and it has Itaúsa as one of the top 5 dividend yield payers of the B3. There is a history of value creation, and it's given us returns even superior to the return of Itaú Unibanco. Well, they're less, but the rate of return is very high, so we're very happy with this creation of value of the shareholders. So solidity is reflected on the portfolio that the holding has now. Yes, we have a portfolio that the people of the day-to-day don't even realize it, but they live with our companies every day. That dozens of millions of Brazilians. We have Itaú Unibanco, we have Copa Energia that has Copagaz and Liquigás, which is the biggest company of gas in Brazil. People drive our roads through Motiva, the trains, the metro, airports. At Dexco, we have the Deca, which is a very strong brand in utilities, restrooms, and metals. So we have Aegea, which is the biggest utilities private company in the country. So we have a portfolio of brands that is very strong. We like to have these companies from relevant sectors connected to infrastructure, but that they give us a good return. And they help with the development of the country. The country lacks infrastructure. The government, state, federal, are unable, because of the deficits, and to do this investment. So infrastructure is a sector that we chose as an important focus for the creation of value. Yes, the private investment facing the fiscal issue that restricts the public investment. So, Alfredo, there is a few questions. We have one from Mozart Galvão, from Carlos Rodriguez, Daniel Pereira, Gilberto Claro. Thank you for taking part. And they're very similar. You can imagine that it's about the yield, the dividends, the payout. So looking at the future, what can they expect of the evolution of the composition of portfolio of Itaúsa, of the strategy of capital allocation, and what can they expect in practice of payout, of dividend yields? Well, thank you very much. We have in practice to do the payout of the interest of our capital, the payouts to our shareholders, and it gives to the shareholders a dividend yield that is high. Well, on the other hand, we've received payouts from other companies, and we've used such resources to reduce our indebtedness, pay the interest, and do the amortization of the debt, and paying the expenses of the holding. Our employees, the Instituto Itaúsa, 50 million per year of the grants. So we use the payout of the other companies to do this. We always try to do this, and Fred and Vicente always try to do this, to try and allocate the capital as best as possible. We always invest, study if it's better to purchase shares or pay the payouts. We're always analyzing where to allocate the capital in the best way possible for our investors, in such a way that you give returns that are adequate for this. We explore this issue of solidity. It represents the performance of Itaúsa in the portfolio as well. To talk about this theme, I would like to bring our first guest. the CEO of Itaú Unibanco, Milton Maluli Filho.
Temos uma salinha aqui.
Let's go to the side room.
Tudo bem?
Tudo bem, Milton?
Hello.
Milton. Seja
Welcome,
bem-vindo
Milton.
aqui à nossa sala. Você viu que estamos chique aqui nesse cenário novo.
You see that this is a new scenario?
Parabéns,
Congratulations.
É isso aí.
Ô, Milton, vamos começar aqui a conversa.
Milton, let's start with a conversation about solidity, exploring the fact of solidity being a fundamental part of the trajectory of Itaú Unibanco and Itaúsa. Can you give us your opinion on the influence of the controller? How is this influence contributing throughout the years to keep the results, solid returns for the creation of value of long term and the vision of the future of the bank? Hi, good morning. It's a pleasure to be with you. It's always a pleasure. Juliana, great to see you again at Itaúsa at Panorama. Well, I'd like to talk about solidity is to talk about Itaú Unibanco, and this is a very strong word in the bank because we believe in the importance of the long-term view. A bank that you don't bring the word solidity, surety, loses the appeal. So it's been this way for many decades, and that's why we fulfilled, and this month, the 27th, we just celebrated 101 years. We're celebrating the 101st anniversary of our bank. So our unlock is always long-term. Alfredo discussed in the beginning, and there is a brand that is very strong of Itaúsa, that is governance as well. Solidity, governance, long-term vision, and this talks to the management of the bank. First, the board is very trained with a very important mix of profiles of the controllers, of the independent board members, always looking at the next cycle. What is the profile and what are the challenges that the bank should have? This change in the board, 3 board members focused in technology, has been very important. Second, the ownership unlock. I believe in the importance of this. When we look at the world, that we see listed companies in the market and performance of the companies that have a shareholder that is clear, and the truth corporations, we see the ownership, the importance of a board that transmits every day the values and that are on a mission. In the bank, our mission is a relay race. This is for the shareholders that pass on generation to generation, and this is for administration. Everything in the bank is continuity. The CEO gives to the next will, so that on the next we can run in the best way possible. So governance of the bank is a reference. We've recently, and because of the market analysts, we've received evaluations that were very positive, and we could be in the first place in all the metrics, and metrics were administration events of IR and the board, and so the market can understand very well that governance for us is important. Governance means having discipline of defining very well the role of the board and the administration, and having a long-term view that is shared. All the executive of the banks are partners of the bank. So this makes an alignment, a perfect alignment between the vision of the shareholder, those that are watching long-term, and the executive shareholders that are here making decision, thinking about the long-term and not the result of the next quarter. This governance works very well. The relationship of trust between the board and the administration is important, and support. The board is a place that we debate everything, where the provocations happen and the contributions are done, the provocations, and the role of administration is to understand and absorb and to work with this plan that was agreed upon. In the bank, if we look at the last cycles, these were very volatile cycles. We've seen the sector going through more volatility, but there are some aspects of our business model which, well, first, the capital allocation for us within Itaú Unibanco to allocate capital is very important. We do it very carefully. These are metrics that I would like to say that are competitive differentials. The management of risks, we've always have it connected to the organization. It's not running away from the risk, it's understanding the risk and managing the risk depending on the scenario and all the risk variables possible. And more than so, innovate. A bank that doesn't have trust, that doesn't look up ahead without foregoing these pillars, they cannot build a future. So the past performance is not a guarantee of a future performance. So that humbleness with which we deal with it, with the themes, and there is a pillar of our culture that I really like. Two, that I really highlighted. The client was always there, present. Ethic was always there. It's the first word of the video of opening of the event, ethics. Two important pillars. First, we don't know everything, and so we have to bring to the bank, because when you're a leader of the sector, you run the risk of thinking that you have all the answers. Actually, if you're not paying attention to the consumer, to the competition, the innovations, to where the market is going, you lose the capacity of being relevant on the long term. So this is something that we've done a lot. The outside on recognizing there are people that do things better than us, and we should, yes, get a higher bar. And the second aspect that I really discuss is we work together with the 100,000 collaborators, 15,000 outside of Brazil. And if you don't have a strong culture, and the cultural transformation that we've done are seeking this, a complete alignment of the behaviors, so we can have a group of collaborators that are highly motivated, and they understand that the values are important and that the client is outside, because we service the client in the best way possible and deliver one bank. Several questions. Everybody wants to ask questions to you. Nobody will ask me about the dividends.
Eu vou deixar para o Alfredo. Olha, uma do Renato Veríssimo.
So one from Renato Verissimo, there is another one along this line. At which stage are you in this journey discussing this highlight that you mentioned about the investments in cultural transformation of the bank? At which stage are you in this journey? And also the main initiatives of the bank that has positively impacted the lives of the clients. Well, the transformation, the cultural and digital, is constant. So the day that I tell you that we reach 100%, there is something wrong. So the objective is a mobile objective, and it changes every day because the world changes, and we are always updating ourselves. So I'm going to separate in two chapters your question. We're going to talk about the cultural transformation and then the digital one. So as soon as I took on, there was a strong culture in the organization, and we always understood that this is a competitive differential. But the culture is dynamic. Ethics is non-temporal. The performance doesn't have time, but there are other pillars such as diversity, inclusion, which is one of the, we don't know everything. These are pillars that are newer. And the CEO is more than a chief executive officer. We are the culture executive officer. And I believe that the role of the CEO is to transform and bring and practice culture day, night, and in the afternoon. There's always, we have to look at the decision, and we have to explain to the people, why are we making this decision? Why is it aligned with our culture? And we've done a series of works with the administration of the bank, with work, culture, workshops, bringing people to the table, discussing with the people, qualifying the item of the culture. There is a logic, there is a reason to be. And this is a work that is evolving. How will we measure the result of the culture? Well, first, the result. Organization is important. Culture in its biggest power. Number two, how is the environment within the bank? We've reached the ENPS. We talk about the Net Promoter Score, which is a metric for the evaluation of satisfaction of clients. We have the Employee Net Promoter Score, which is a metric to evaluate how people are in a bank. For us, the environment is important. If we don't have a team that is motivated with everything that we do, it's very difficult for them to enchant and involve our clients. So for me, this combination is very important. We've operated in the biggest standards of NPS, and the NPS is very important. So if you have motivated a culture that is clear, very clear, the result is a consequence of you servicing the clients. So the result and the satisfaction of the client are walking hand in hand. And it's every day, and we're never going to reach 100% of the journey by definition, but we are at a solid moment of this of the cultural transformation. Very happy with the results. And on the digital transformation, going back in time, the bank didn't want to assemble a digital bank by the side of a big bank, because when you do that, you lose the capacity of transforming. It seems that everything that is new has to be built outside of the big bank, where there is the 70,000 clients. And our decision is to face this transformation. We have to start by ourselves. And this is for the digital cultural transformation. I submitted an email saying that the cultural transformation started with me. I needed to adapt. I needed to transform. And when you invite the people to transform themselves with you, it's a very, very easy process. Well, if I have to do that change, the same thing for you. The same is for the digital transformation. When the transformation happens in a bank where you have over 70,000 clients, we did a strong investment over the years. We have over 70% of our systems modernized. When I talk about the modernized, I'm saying that it's running in the cloud. It's preconditioned to go to the cloud, that the platform is rewritten and modernized. We changed the method. We have over 25,000 people working in an agile model, which changes the way of delivering the value. I'm going to give you some data. A few years ago, we did in production what changes the lives of the client, what changes the lives of the customer. So we did 1,000 in a day. And now we have an exponential change. So now we have platforms in scale. We have speed of response. The super app, which is unified, we had 7 apps. Now they're all unified in one super app for 100% of the bases. And we migrated over 50 million clients that had an experience in the mono app that are now at the super app. And this rate of migration was 99.3%. with an index of satisfaction above 80, which shows that we have taken care of the clients. And we are a universal bank. We are so strong in the wholesale as the retail. Since we are so good at Itaú BBA asset management and private bank, we are so in the legal and natural persons bank, and this is the strength of the bank, to be a university. Well, we are a universal bank. We are looking at all the businesses with robust growth. The economic activity is fundamental. And growth. If we don't have growth, if we don't have an agenda that is structuring so that the growth is more vigorous, naturally the capacity to grow is affected. But we found new avenues of growth. This is important regardless of the GDP. We try to find new pockets and new markets, and we've managed to grow very strongly in a digital transformation that is profound and cultural as well. Well, I think it's nice if you can mention to the people that are watching us, Itaú Unibanco is one of the biggest, if not the biggest, technology company in the number of employees that has provided for this growth. How much of that has helped us to reduce the gaps with the digital banks and so on and so forth? But the new competition that is there, and a new competition that is competent. So to have that humility of seeing that there is competent people, that we need to be quicker is important. Alfredo talked about a point, and now today is we are the biggest technology company in Brazil. We closed this last month with 19,000 people in technology. Imagine in a bank of 100,000. Well, the math is not well, in Brazil we have 85,000 people. The 19,000 are just in Brazil. So now we're talking about 25% in the base of the bank, 25% of the employees in technology. But there is a new point in this discussion. In the past, we looked at technology as an isolated area. We went there, the business area did a request, the technology took to the shop floor, they came back with the product. That changed. Our 85,000 collaborators, all the business areas and products are also managers of technology. So today we believe in a concept that we call, that Amazon uses, which is two in a box. You have a head of business and technology together working in that platform. So all the business manager of the bank is a manager of tech platform. All the head of a product is the head of a platform technology. So throughout time, even those 19,000 that I brand as technology, they're not going to exist in that concept. So I would like to say that over 30,000 people in the bank think about technology and products of technology. This is very relevant. So that made us be capable. Over the last cycle and the last months, we launched over 19 new products, which are features of context within the journey of the client. So those of you that access our super apps will see that there is a new solution, is the management of expenses. We discovered that 60% of our clients didn't have information of how they're spending. They thought that they knew, and they just found data, and they got frightened by data. We've launched solutions that had a level of engagement and very quick success. So today, you measure not by delivery of the solution. It's not being available in the app that the product is delivered, and it's by adoption. Billions of reais in the cofrinhos and the savings accounts, millions of clients using the control of expenses, and we solve pains of the client. So we've been so prepared to compete with we can compete with the new banks. Of course, we have a transformation to be done. We plan over the next few years. We want to turn off the mainframes. This is transformation for a bank of our size, and we have the capacity to compete, and this is an important change. We have highly trained teams, high-tech technology, and a capacity of execution. So we're very excited. Once again, feet on the ground, humility, and there's still a lot of homework. Well, you're talking about the educational, the finance education that Brazilians need. If you can tell us about the segments that you see with more opportunities. Well, Juliana, we're in a phase of budgeting, and we will go to the call of the third quarter. And at the beginning of the next year is the call of the fourth and the guidance. So the main lines of the balance sheet and what we expect for the next year. And we're in this process. And activity is a central. Well, looking at the capacity of the company, the companies, we are in a restrictive cycle of interest rate, and that's why we have monetary policy to bring inflation, which is the worst tax that you can have. It's regressive, and it impacts relevantly, specifically the bases that are less privileged. So this is important. Even so, we did a big transformation for the natural persons in the bank. We've announced a refresh in the legal. We've seen enormous opportunities. We just did the Itaú Day. So we talked to the market a lot of what we imagined to be doing over the last year. So we have opportunities to grow relevantly in the segments that we are leaders. In the high income, we are leaders in companies. There is a lot of opportunities. There are some banks outside of Itaú Unibanco that have opportunity of selling. Itaú BBA, we are leaders of the bank. The investment bank depends on economic activity with interest rates at 15, but we are relevant and leaders in the capital markets, and we have opportunities. We are leaders in the private market, and we see opportunities to be able to grow. We are leaders in assets amongst the private. We have opportunities to grow. So growing is the word of order. All the businesses with opportunities. The super app, the migration of the 15 million clients is very relevant for this process of growing the basis. So there is opportunities. But let's see the credit scenario, which is very important because growing the portfolio depends on the perspective scenario, and we are operating with the best thresholds of delinquency in the industry, the best thresholds, and I say that we are at the best time. So to grow strongly or to go through a volatility moment. So we will navigate as we will have more information. Nathan, a lot has been discussed in the technology world on artificial intelligence. And I think I wanted to hear you. How can that help Itaú Unibanco to reduce costs? The bank still has a big legacy of costs and, branches and people. How are we going to use artificial intelligence to help our clients? And this is the first objective, but also to reduce costs and help the bank to have more competitive. Well, artificial intelligence is a reality. We hear a few people, oh, maybe it's a hype. No, it's no hype. It's a reality. I mean, how many of you have had the experience of talking to ChatGPT? These models are impressive. And what do I say in the bank that is important? We have in-house artificial intelligence, which is what we are going to improve the processes to be more efficient, to have more quality, to have more speed. We've done that. We have machine learning, which is a way of artificial intelligence. And now we're evolving with the generative AI. So all the corporate areas of the bank have projects. Itaú Unibanco has 600 projects today in artificial intelligence. We have a relevant partnership. We launched our Institute of Technology. Is very important. It's a way that we found to bring academia. So we have the best universities in Brazil and outside of Brazil, supporting with dedicated teams to test cases. And the most important is two combinations. We invested as soon as we started with artificial intelligence. We surrounded of the best of the world to make sure that we would have the most innovative. We spent 2 years investing in foundation. What is foundation? If someone gets into our app and they need to do a PIX by WhatsApp by artificial intelligence, and I recommend that you use this, I used it last night. It's an experience that is incredible. And what if you ask a question to the chat? What if the chat hallucinates? No, we are not a fintech. We live on reputation. So we invested 2 years creating the foundations. What are the mechanisms of protection, the guardrails, so we can have the models very well trained so that they work amongst a spectrum. So we launched 3 solutions that impact the client, and they are innovative. We're one of the first ones. First, I mentioned the PIX on the WhatsApp. With generative AI in the way that we are doing our model, it's incredible, and I recommend that you test it. Second, the investment specialist. We cannot have a specialist of investment for every client of the bank because the bank has 70 million, and the percentage of these clients are investors. And we can deliver for every client a trained specialist, not with a model, the LLMs. They're trained with our data. So it's an organization focused on data that has used this data to train the models. And this is a strong combination. So we can train the models with the proprietary data. And nobody has that because we have trajectory, knowledge, and depth in these markets. When you combine that with the highlight of the models, this combination is very strong. Someone can work with an investment new assistant, but we can bring context to this assistant and train this assistant with our intelligence. So intelligence Itaú with the artificial intelligence taking the result and the end. We launched companies, which is to service digitally 100% of our clients with 100% generative AI. The level of interaction with the clients, it's incredible because adoption is very strong. And Brazilians really like artificial intelligence technology. And that will bring efficiencies. All the transformation that is done in the wholesale and the retail in the combined in the whole bank has to make the bank more efficient. Efficiency is a word of order so we can understand better our clients, so we can be quicker and we can be more competitive. Price is a function of cost. So the more efficient we are, the more risk of credit we can take on the long term. For a few segments that we work less, and more price we will have to service all the segments. So AI has a transformational role, not only in the financial institute, but if you're not looking at that, you are delayed. You can test the PIX to my account to see how it works. I will invite you for a dinner to celebrate the event. Well, we have to talk about dividends. Payout. We have a lot of questions about that. All throughout the last years, the bank has managed to grow. That demands quality where the distribution of proceeds is so relevant. And we know it's difficult to balance. So is it possible to expect that this dynamic be sustainable? I think that this is a virtuous cycle. And when you allocate the capital, when you create value for your clients, and in the way that you described here, the results come. And we could deliver a profitability that is much higher than the cost of capital. So for us is a mantra, the creation of value. What is the value creation that we discussed? It's a result of profitability of the bank less the cost of capital. Today we work with the cost of capital calculated with methodologies, but we have a number close to 15%. Everything that the bank has an interest rate, the ROI, above 15%, the return on the investment, everything that is above 15 is creation of value for the shareholders. And this is the way that we're working. There's a metric. Bank is a regulated activity. We have to have capital levels that are important, not only for scenarios, for the unexpected loss, but also we need to have capital to grow. Growing is not just organic, it's organic acquisitions, growing the credit portfolio, market risk, operational risk. And this is the way that why we have capital. We have a minimum appetite. How much the bank has to run with capital, and this is defined by 11.5 of capital one. It's a set one. Above that, we have what we call the AT1, but we always look at it 11.5 as a relevant metric. The bank is running above 13 of capital. Therefore, you can think, well, 13 less than 11.5 is the excess of capital, and this should be the payout of dividends. For the dividends, we work with half of a point above the appetite of the board. So this is the minimum. So we have to work with a margin. So we work with half of a percentage above. That's why dividends, we talk about 12. And the regulator will evolve. Basilea in Switzerland brings new rules. And now we are seeing some regulatory changes, operational risk and credit risk. All of that to say that we don't have that dividend that in the past we said extraordinary. It's not extraordinary. I call it additional dividend because it's been paid every year. So we finish the year now we're in a budgeting phase. We are going to look at our expectation of growth. Objective one is investing in activity, growing the bank. We don't have a goal of dividends. We have objective, which is invest and allocate well the capital in the institution. And on the other hand, we don't want to have the excesses. So what do we do at the beginning of the year? We do projections as the portfolio grow, what we have of opportunities, what is the capital that is defined by the board, plus that minimum, and then the idea is to have a capital with an additional dividend. With the information of today, and these are informations that are always dynamic, we hope to have an additional dividend in a year that the results of the bank are growing. So the dividend, all the shares are growing because the interest are, the profit is growing. And the payout, we don't give a guidance of payout. How much of the income will be distributed? No, what is the excess? But the expectation is to have a dividend that is additional, relevant, being paid at the beginning of next year, unless there is another decision at the board. And the bank has been done a repurchasing of shares, which is a way to deliver the proceeds. Well, we heard feedbacks, the investors, they ask the cash, and the investor, the foreign investors, the institutionals, they really like the repurchasing of shares. We have a base of investors of over 1 million investors, client investors, and we also have in Itaú a relevant investors of over 600,000 investors. So we always service with the cash dividend, but repurchase is a way of distribution, and we've been doing that, and this benefits all shareholders. A question that is always strong is the impact in the holding. And you visited the exhibition. I didn't have such a privileged guide such as you, but let's catch up. Well, I can go with you again. So there is the activities of impact. And talking about sustainable growth, the bank has increased the financing for 1 trillion reais until 2030. So can you tell us about the main challenges always and the opportunities to integrate this agenda of sustainability, especially in the sectors of agriculture and infrastructure? Sustainability, the ESG that is forgotten at times. The bank doesn't follow, fashion. ESG is culture, is value. So that's present since the birth of the bank and Itaúsa. So we got into the Dow Jones Index of Sustainability in the end of the 90s. And nobody was talking about this. We continue to be there. We are the first institution to be part of this index. And the foundations that Alfredo mentioned, we have foundations that are very relevant. So the S of social is fundamental. And the foundations, the Instituto de Banco and Foundation Itaú Fundação are wonderful, and we are low profile. We don't do it as a campaign, we do it because we believe. Governance is key, and the E, we want to be the bank of the transition to an economy with less carbon. We don't want to be police, because when you have that posture, you don't help your clients. A great deal of them want to have a plan. They want to do that transition with an economy of less carbon. So we launched this program of 1 trillion reais because we got to the previous goal, which is over 400 million reais in financing and structuring of capital markets that have this objective to do the transition with a decarbonized economy. And we have this goal a year and a half before of what we propose. So we need to have big dreams, ambitions, and we're going to have a new objective. So 1 trillion reais is a relevant objective. So this is the objective. We went through half of the challenge. We did 500 billion reais in this nature, and we believe that until 2030, we are going to fulfill this. And we're going to have the Net Zero Bet Alliance. It's a global alliance that we pretend not only in the scope 1 and 2, we are carbon neutral, which are the indirect of our clients. How can we help these sectors? You mentioned agriculture, infrastructure, oil and gas. How do we help these sectors in this transition? And this is our role, taking products, solutions, ESG as business. They have to be inserted in the organization. So it can't be a separate area, because if they're not connected with the clients, it doesn't advance with the speed that it should. So this is a common challenge, and I think that all of our clients, they have clear plans, and we have to walk hand in hand financing and helping with this transition. Thank you, Milton. So now we have some other agendas. We want to help you for the participation of Milton Maluli, another year at Panorama, and we explore the solidity with you, with innovation, sustainability. It was very nice. Thank you, Juliana. It's a pleasure to have you. I hope to be here next year with another Panorama Itaúsa. And I would like to thank all of you, investors, clients that are helping us. And we really work with our foot on the ground and humility, because the challenge is we are just in the first year of the 100 years, and we have a lot of work to be done. This answer is an important attribute of solidity, and we're going to talk about another attribute of Itaúsa, sustainability. Sustainability is the path of our destination. Let's talk. At Itaúsa, sustainability is part of the strategy. It's not an isolated project. It's at the center of everything. And we do it with responsibility and long-term vision, connecting results, consistent results, with real impact. Let's continue to talk about it.
Vamos então falar agora mais sobre essa mensagem.
So let's talk about this message of Marcelo Furtado. And for Itaúsa, sustainability is part of the strategy. Milton talked about this. So if you can explore this theme of sustainability, how is this theme being translated in the day-to-day of the holding? Well, this is a very relevant theme, and sometimes it's more in vogue, but for us is more basic in our strategy and our investment. It's in our DNA of the families. We pass it on generation by generation. Several members of the family have their own foundations, their own institutes. So that stems with our DNA, and this is transmitted for our invested companies. So this is very important. We have this bias of sustainability. It's unavoidable. All the companies, if they have an agenda of sustainability, you have to take care of climate change. Banco Itaú wants to be the bank of transition. They want to help the companies to do this, and it demands investment. It's not free. There is long-term investment. So for us, it's very relevant to have this agenda. For many, many years, we've been working with this. We've taken part of several indices of sustainability at B3 and abroad. We created the Itaúsa Institute. Well, Marcelo talked about sustainability. He is the president of the institute, and he focuses on the conservation of the environment and the economy. We have 50 million reais, and we work with the institute not only with projects that are our own, but with projects that we support. So we can multiply projects, and we don't create projects that are the same as the others. And we are supporting COP 30, which we're going to be present with the other companies. showing cases of success and supporting sustainability. So we have an important support. And through our invested companies and Fundação Itaú, these two entities without they're NGOs, they have a budget of 450 million reais per year, and the bank has another 350 million reais that is the fiscal incentive. So Itaú Unibanco is a big sponsor of culture, of education, of mobility. It's an agenda that is in our companies that we give incentives that they have their own institutes and they work in their communities. So we know that in Brazil, we talk about sustainability without talking about sustainability and infrastructure. So now we're going to call the CEOs of two very important companies in this sector. We're going to receive Miguel Seta, CEO of Motiva, and Radamés Kasagi, CEO of Aegegi.
Obrigada pela presença. Mais ano juntos.
Thank you for being here.
Vamos falar então pouquinho aí sobre essa questão da importância.
So let's talk about the importance of the sector of infrastructure for the development of the country, the sustainable development, and how is the strategy of sustainability? Well, first of all, I would like to thank Alfredo and Itaúsa for this invitation. I think it's a merit, the strength that we do with the investors to give transparency to this strategy. And we, as the invested companies, we want to contribute. Now, talking about sustainability, we have a complete strategy in mitigation, reduction of emissions, and the strategy of adaptation. So preparing for the climate change. The infrastructure is very much exposed to the climate change, and we have a mission, an objective, and we've anticipated this conclusion of climate resilience. We've adapted our infrastructure, our metros, our trains, our airports, and with the scenario of climate change, we can be more prepared. This is risk and return. And this is more necessary so we can avoid the impacts of climate change, and we have plans for this phenomena. We have 5,000 plans for climate change. On the side of mitigation, it means reduction of mitigations. We have a self-regulation. Even though the sector doesn't have defined goals, we want to get to a plan of 2035 with neutralizing carbon. And this means in the mission that are scope 1 and 2 are the ones that are controlled by the company. We are doing the process of decarbonization. What does it imply? Changing the fleet to electric vehicles, avoiding the losses and the air conditioning of the trains, reusing the asphalt. So so Autobahn in Bandeirantes highway, we have 3 billion reais reinvesting in the recapping of the highways. This is done in 68% of realization of the asphalt. So we are reusing this asphalt and the recapping. We have an assertive strategy.
Radamés, traz para a gente pouco, então, desses exemplos. A área de
So Radamés brings the examples for utilities.
Fundamental, né?
Per si é importante.
Não, per si é importante. Acho que está na essência, né?
Well, I think this is in the essence of our business.
Mas ponto legal.
But one important point that is important to share with the shareholders of Itaúsa and those that are hearing us, in November, we're going to be at COP. So Itaúsa and Aegea are discussing sustainability, how the companies are reorganizing so we can bring social legacy. It's important for Brazil, in the heart of the Amazon, and Itaúsa will be there. Aegea will be delivering the first universalized city, Bacarena, in the metropolitan region of Belém, as a symbol of the sustainability, the management of the cycle of water, full of the recollection, the treatment, the distribution to the people, the recollection of the treatment of waters, and generating sustainability, environmental sustainability, access to sanitary works. We are doing the universalization of the service in Brazil. Sustainability is at the root of all that. And we talk about the health. Well, another important aspect in here, for those that are watching, is to explain that sustainability is a synonym of creation of value. We have a trajectory of decarbonization, and we are going through all of our electric consumption for the renewable energy market, and this with 20% of energy and a cheaper kilowatt hour cost. All of the policy of decarbonization with an energy that is 20% cheaper. Sustainability doesn't have to be a cost. It can be a lever. I think the investors, they expect that the most. This agenda that I think that we cannot let it go. Today is an issue of value. We're changing the fleet of the internal combustion to the electric engine. Today it's more advantageous to have it. Cheaper fuel, lower maintenance. So our tolls, they justify themselves economically. Electric tolls. So we have this issue. There is a demand of the investor per this commitment. And today, the investor expects, as a retribution for the society, that the big companies that they fulfill their role in terms of climate. Of course, a smaller company has more difficulties, but the big companies, they cannot steer away from their responsibility. Well, Radamés, we always talk about the advances in infrastructure, but still the path, a long ways to be explored. Can you bring us this overview of development, perspectives, opportunities of investments, and infrastructure in the country? Since the approval, the market has reinforcing and reducing the regulatory risk. That broke a barrier to away from the big dilemma of the transformation of the utilities in Brazil. So the appetite of risk on the very long term, they can bring capitals that are organized throughout the world per demand in the order of 1 trillion reais. And that has originated by BDS as a project factory, as a big protagonist in the launch of big programs of concession, along with state governments and big metropolitan regions, full concessions,
O avanço
The advance has been
no mercado de infraestrutura, a grande
the
transformação
big transformation, but it's very far away from being addressing this transformation as a whole for Brazil. So,
pouco
today,
mais de 44% da população
44% of the population is serviced by new contracts that will tend to invest and guarantee investments in the next 10 years, and the other half, more than half, still awaits the social discussion that will lead the big programs to take place. We hope that in the next 2 years, big relevant regions such as Minas Gerais, Goiás, an important part of Rio Grande do Sul will come to the market, attracting companies such as Aegea in this dispute to guarantee the continuous advancement in Brazil. So we hope that the demand of origination will continue in Brazil. And the return in capital allocation, the biggest, we have to do the adequate allocation with the prioritization of where to allocate the capital and to take care of the client are the key brands for a prosperous future. Well, infrastructure is the same thing. We see that there is an evolution, but if you can bring us the challenges and opportunities. Well, certainly, yesterday at the macro day in of Itaúsa, I mentioned that in Brazil, only 12% of the roadways have asphalt. 90% doesn't have asphalt. Only 1.5% has concessions. So can you imagine the potential for this segment? And curiously, what the specialists tell us is that more than half of what is the infrastructure in Brazil, transport, and Brazil could be investing more than 200 billion reais per year in roadways. And a good news, I like to see the glass half full. In 2025, it will be the highest year of investment in Brazil. In roadways, in infrastructure, we're going to have 280 billion reais. In the previous year, it was relevant for 24, and I think that we are in a super cycle of investment in infrastructure where a great deal is in transport and logistics. Our Capital Markets Day that we've done last week, we announced 100 billion reais of investment in roadways and 60 billion reais of metros and trains. 160 billion reais of investment that is possible. We cannot participate in everything. We're selective. We have a potential universe of 160 billion of investment all throughout. So you're talking about the selection, discipline, capital allocation. Radames discussed this. How do you apply it in infrastructure projects and you seize strategic opportunities that guarantee sustainable returns? How do you do this balance, Radames? From the standpoint of projects and infrastructure, the demand overload of intensive capital is a differential when compared to other businesses. Important facts here in the process of selection is governance that discusses deeply with transparency in the long-term view. This composition guarantees that you look at the investment not only from the standpoint of returns, you evaluate the structural risk associated, the legacy that you will leave at that time. There is the celerity for no. This is the no of, this is not the moment of doing it. This is not the moment of investing. Or this is the moment of investing because the belief in transformation will leave a relevant legacy that our demands, that our businesses demand in relationship with our clients. So we have to ensure that the governance has to do the speedy evaluation committed to the long-term evaluation. Secondly, the prioritization on the return, not only from the macro structural of the commitments of the contracts, but trying to identify, in our case, the investment of the next house. And in our case, is how can you evolve with the performance of the company so that the next house is quicker? How can you do that movement, making that the capital structure with the investors and the financiers, so they realize what is the relevance of your work through the instruments, guaranteeing that this process of trust and feedback of credit and reputation can broaden the capacity of the company to transform. So the good choices will generate a process of strengthening of the trust. This has been the guide with which the company has been working over the 15 years. One important thing that got the big volumes of investments for the next years, there's always a discussion. Well, maybe the private sector has the capacity of doing all that. There's concessions. I think it's been very consolidated for over 20 years, and the government trusts us. So you're building this recent journey of 5-10 years of concessions and privatization. But the question is, the private sector has the capacity to do all this investment. I think that the word here is partnership, Alfredo. In the private sector is a lever of development in partnership with the public sector. These are relevant instruments, and to create a business environment in Brazil with legal surety, with a regulatory stable board. And this will attract new investors. We have the roadway sector, the presence of international investors that are coming back to take part in Brazil. And the roadways is more mature in our segment. You see companies such as our strategic, you see finance, the sponsors that are getting into this market, and construction companies want to take part, and international companies that want to take part, that are flowing through the regulatory established market. These answers depend on the business environment so that the investors can seize the opportunity. So roadways is, a big market. What about utilities and sewage? Well, very interesting, because it allows you to look at the dimension of the flow of challenges in a different direction. Today, AGEA services 860 municipalities, and in each municipality we are doing a big transformation, a big one. In these environments, starting with the front and the execution, the guarantee, the leadership for the business environment is our responsibility. You are creating the environment. You're creating and engaging the new entrepreneurs of construction of the materials, so you can guarantee that this multitude of entrepreneurs have a shared prosperity from the commitments that we've assumed. So this engagement process attracts the capital partners. So when we look at the question structured, the private sector will have the capacity to do all the investments. So the answer is yes. There will be the capacity. The arrangement and the conditions are going to mature through the journey. There is a learning.
do poder público para financiar e organizar as
And
grandes
we were
transformações
depending on the public sector to do the big transformations. The public sector has suffered and now the investment has been of the private sector that believes in Brazil, that believes in the transformation in Brazil. And this has made this revolution to make a difference in Brazil. So it's our responsibility to create an ethical environment with a reduction of risk so that the entrepreneurs that are distributed on our businesses have an environment of conformity to perform, to have their income to prosper, while we lead people and long-term work in Brazil. So you have to believe in yes. Now, for our investors, it's important the adaptation. It's this is an environment that we have a moderate competition. So it's not the competition that is value. So this is good. We got the opportunity of investment that are adequate. It's return and risk. It's interesting. There is an interesting, which is what is the role of Itaúsa in the governance of companies? We discussed this and how this collegiate association associative contributes so that we have a value creation. There are two cases. Well, Aegea is a company that is still closed. Well, Itaúsa is one of our shareholders that is represented in the board with two members of the board, two administrators, two people of high quality, Roberto Setúbal, and we're going to have another person, two people that are transported for the board. The values of governance is the base of everything. The values in action, and we see that. We, at the board, it's not only the ethics and support to the challenges of the company, but the challenge, and I always comment this with Roberto and Vicente, we like this balance. On the one side, the support, conditions so that we can work, trust. On the other hand, there is the stimulus and the challenge, and that's a part. Even with the allocation of capital, Itaúsa has a very refined look for this requirement of management. So we have an experience. I've been for 2.5 years at the company. For me, it's been a privilege to work with the board. Well, the entry of Itaúsa has a symbol for the big turnover of the company. Itaúsa got, it's one of the biggest big points in transformation and challenges and protagonism that is effective. Well, from the standpoint of contribution, additional ones, that accurate unlock on the experience that it was accumulated in Brazil, and the many Brazils and the political changes, economic changes, the experience of the incorporations that came to the table on advances, retain, and they are aligned with the attentive unlook to people, to the processes of transparency, integrity, which were strong in the company, and now they're even more once you have that unlock that we have with Itaúsa on people. Well, Alfredo, you talk about uniting expertise and sharing the values. It's what we try to bring, especially to Aegea, which is a non-listed company in its evolution. It was always a company of very few shareholders. And we have provocations to help the company and the administration, even the risks, the reputational risks, the climate risks, to improve the governance as a whole. So the company has evolved in an incredible way. If you look at the 5 years, the evolution is incredible. The transformation is enormous. So the company grows, and we need that. But the most important thing, and Radames, he is the leader of the company, has responded in a very efficacious way to face these challenges. CCR is more mature. So we have a history of the market that is very broad, and you have a governance that is more established. And that issue of infrastructure, it's connected, and I discussed with Alfredo about the macroeconomic scenario. This interest rate of 15%, it's difficult to invest. So I wanted you to comment on, well, you're discussing opportunities and a pipeline of investments, but we know that resources are expensive right now. So it's important to explain where the resources are coming for these investments. How is the capital infrastructure? Of course, the macroeconomic at rates 15 is not favorable on the long term. 20 years. Well, our perspective, our conviction is that this is going to normalize. So what we do is to have all the capital allocation care. We are careful. We want to invest, and it's an agreement with the macroeconomic current scenario. We have a profitability above the capital cost, and we're waiting. The market is showing, since the beginning of the year, we have a GSR of 50%. The evolution of the shares, along with the distribution of dividends, shows that the market is at a moment of pricing this risk. And obviously, we understand that there's going to be a normalization with the curve. And we are very selective. Now we have our capital markets day. We choose our strategy. And we are premium in strategic geographies. What are the premium assets? That anyway, in any place, there are assets of extreme quality. Now we have a portfolio that is more demanded, but at a moment that the macroeconomic, we're going to have a profitability that is very relevant. Motiva and Aegea are companies that are structurally more leveraged, more in debt. They do long-term investments. That's why, Alfredo, our board discussions and committees, a very important point. At the origin of a new business, we want to do a competition. We want to take part of this engagement in a way that is efficient. So when we take and we verify the last competitions of the last 5 years, working in monopolies, we purchased the next house. In Rio de Janeiro, you see, we're buying a monopoly. So we're paying a third in comparison to the competition over the last 5 years. So paying cheaper and being assertive is a way of creating a structural initial betting when you start the infrastructure process. And the second point, the big projects in utilities and infrastructure as a whole, they have from the standpoint of tariffs, protection, natural protection against inflation. So the set of working the tariffs guarantees the correction of the inflation throughout time. So all the growth and capital allocation is structured in the diversity of sources and instruments. Idea has financed through this growth period through capital markets. 80% of the capital markets national and mainly international. We've just launched the biggest blue bond, global $750 million in 10 years. That's a landmark for the company to believe that this engagement will attract the investors that want not only return but legacy. They want to support the transformation and in new businesses, the capital partners that are strategic, such as Itaúsa in Rio de Janeiro, that they're a capital partner. So while the journey of IPO is the adequate moment for the opening of capitals, the company has been financing and keeping its discipline on what are the commitments. The financial responsibility has been a landmark in the life of the company, and we want to follow this. It's always exciting. We're talking about hope and legacy, yes. Here we see Brazil that works. And we tend to see the glass half full. It's nice to see the glass, well, half empty, and now we're seeing the glass half full for health, for the dignity of people. So I think that this is the Brazil that works, and it's very nice to see these companies with their being well positioned in the country. Well, thank you very much to you, Radames. Thank you for being a part of Panorama. So I hope that you enjoyed. So we can watch in the social networks, and the people are always updating. And now, the next theme, which is associative management, another attribute of Itaúsa. Do you want to be an associate of Itaúsa? Let's talk about it. More than investing, we want to get partners that share our values. We do governance, capital allocation, and long-term vision. And we find partners with a deep sector knowledge. That complementarity is what brings the impact. This is an association. And well, we have new companies. And now we're going to talk about this very important theme for Itaúsa that Fred brought in this video. So I have Fred, and he discussed with our studio. Frederico Pascovich, he is the Director of Investor Relations and Director of Portfolio. And we have Vicente, he was mentioned, is your first participation. He is an independent board member of Itaúsa, and he's also a coordinator of the strategic committee of the company. Welcome. Good morning, everyone. Itaúsa is a holding of portfolio management, and our leitmotif is that. So for me, it's very pleasant. I'm very happy to be discussing the portfolio. Thank you for the opportunity. So people are taking part, and we are getting the main themes that are important for the investor. So let's talk about how we've had the evolution of the portfolio manager role. What can you give us as a highlight in this evolution? Well, in 2017, Itaúsa allocated 11 billion reais and did 5 new investments in the portfolio. After this initial phase of development, with the condition of the portfolio, we came back to the investment, which is focusing and contributing for the creation of value and to support our invested companies. In the macroeconomic environment, very challenging, such as today, this is very important. And if I follow the evolution of Itaúsa from a traditional holding we have the portfolio
foco de atuação mais
team that has a focus
conjunto às demais da Itaúsa para apoiar a governança da
with the other areas of Itaúsa.
E esse apoio
And so this support is given by a close follow-up of the day-to-day of the companies
das áreas técnicas da Itaúsa
with all the technical areas of Itaúsa and trying to translate this day-to-day in an efficient and day-to-day for governance,
dos mais diversos temas e desafios.
talking about the themes and challenges. So, in your role of coordinator of the strategic committee and new business of Itaúsa, how is this committee following and contributing for these? Well, I'd like to highlight the care and the commitment that Itaúsa has with the management of the portfolio. I am an independent board member, and I was invited to the board that establishes the goals, evaluates the performance of the invested companies. So it's a committee that is checking what the controllers are doing in every one of the companies, and we are comfortable. This is done with the coordination of an independent board member as well. So concluding the first cycle, where the focus of the committee was to identify targets, to evaluate and price these targets, and acquire them to assemble a portfolio, such as we've done over the last 10 years, the focus of the committee has expanded. So we can look at two dimensions. One is the generation of value between each asset, and specifically to extract the full potential of each asset, with the creation of value, the opportunities, the challenges, the risks involved in each asset, and looking at how the contribution of each of these assets can form a profile of risk and return that is optimized for the portfolio as a whole. We have a few questions that are arriving, and I'd like to include a question from André Jesus dos Santos. So I'm going to give the floor to Vicente, and he asks, well, in the role of representative of Itaúsa in the board in Copa Energia, how do you see the work of Itaúsa as an agent of change in the investor company to have to push for the sustainable development of these companies? Well, we work with two pillars: the generation of specific value in the asset and the profile risk return of the portfolio as a whole. Question of André is about the first pillar. I'm going to talk about it. It's important to highlight that Itaúsa exerts influence in the invested through companies through the boards. We don't manage the day-to-day of any of the companies. We have partners in each of the companies with which we share the management of the company. So through the board and the committees of the board that we exercise influence in the companies. So that our representatives can fulfill the influence and generate value in the invested companies, we have two important characteristics. One is the mindset of our representative in each of the companies and the quality of the information that they have to make the adequate decisions. On the mentality, the mindset, we want to give incentives to our representatives to have a posture that is very provocative, questioning, always raising the bar of what is the minimum performance, acceptable performance of the assets. So being obsessed by the creation of value of each of the assets. On the preparation of the boards to make the decisions that are more asserted, there's a series of mechanisms that we created and we practice at Itaúsa. I'm going to detail. It's important that the people understand the magnitude of what we're doing to guarantee that our board members have an impact in the boards where they work. The first mechanisms are portfolio mechanisms where the 5 areas, management of portfolio, finance, legal, and sustainability, they join to talk about perspectives about each of the companies of the portfolio. An analysis with different angles so we can assemble something holistic about Itaúsa. The risk is great for the holistic vision, but there is an initial risk with just the analytics. And here is a second mechanism, which is periodic meetings with the executives of the company, where they have the opportunities of sharing their perspectives, their understanding on the context, and the opportunities for value creation. Third level, third mechanism that is established are the functional forums, where Itaúsa invites representatives for the invested companies to discuss specific themes: tax, relationship with the investors, accounting, people, in such a way that the invested companies can work with the aggregated, with the mistakes learned. So we have a minimum threshold so we can follow with the invested companies. The third mechanism, the fourth mechanism that we have is for the risk mitigation. It is the way in which we participate or interact with the audit committees of our invested companies. We have an onlook of understanding what are the main risks, what we are doing to mitigate each of the risks, and with that previous information, we have an understanding on the potential of creation of value and the risks involved. The set of these information is shared with the strategy committee, and the idea is that the members of the committee have the opportunities of looking at that set of information and ponder and establish actions that can be taken in each of the invested companies. So, at each meeting of the committee, one or two invested companies are the object of a deep dive, detailed on the understanding of what is happening at each of these invested companies. The next step is to take these recommendations of the committee to the board so they can understand what's happening. In these opportunities, we invite CEOs of the invested companies so they can share what they have in mind, what they're planning to do, and they hear the board members about the perspective of Itaúsa on what they have. The next step is to collect all these institutions, all that information in an internal, which is the guide of creation of value. So this is very concise. What is the understanding of Itaúsa on every invested company? What is the potential and what are the challenges? This makes it easy for you to understand what we can expect from the invested companies and to unify the quality, because the agent of Itaúsa is part of the invested companies. So this is the strategic vision on the medium to long term on the invested companies. Of course, there are decisions more short-term tactical that we have the board members for each of the invested companies. For this, we do meetings, preparatory meetings, before each board meeting where the representative has the opportunity to discuss with the technical area of Itaúsa what are the main points of retention. So with that, we try to give to the board members the medium to long-term vision and the short-term vision. Yes, detailing the important work of understanding how it works. So I wanted to bring the second pillar, that there were changes in the second pillar, which is optimization of the return and risk of the portfolio, which is very relevant for the creation of value of the shareholders. Can Vicente and Fred comment on that? Well, the first part, we had diversification of Itaúsa. We have a strong focus in being diligent in doing analysis, pricing correctly, the main assets that we are going to acquire, and this resulted in an interesting results for the portfolio as a whole. And recently, we've done a deep dive in analysis and verifying the correlation of the assets. How can one asset be a hedge for another asset? And since I got into the details into the pillar, which is the generation of the value of the specific asset, I'm going to give the floor to Fred so he can talk about what we're doing in the second quarter. And we are evolving, as Vicente commented. We're leaving an individual risk return on and looking at the Itaúsa as a whole. So we have a real-time measurement of how is the return of the portfolio in each of the investments. And these analyses, what are the risks and opportunities for the portfolio, not only for this company. This allows us to anticipate potential movements that are important for the generation of value for Itaúsa as a whole. These analyses, they contribute and they support new investments or selling assets. Not only that return, but how it's going to impact me. So we're trying to evolve this return to have an understanding of what is the marginal contribution for each of the assets of the portfolio as a whole. So we want to anticipate information. We know that there are conclusions. We want to anticipate the studies that are ongoing. This answer will address a question that was done by Robson Meira. I don't like to talk about the conclusion when we talk about portfolio. I think that in a volatile world, from the standpoint of national macroeconomics, and I'd like to say that portfolio management is a tool that is alive, permanent. We have to be paying attention for the new allocations of capital and disinvestments. But specifically, 2 points that I'd like to mention. One of the invested companies that we have a portfolio, we presented a profile of risk return much superior to what we had when we did the investment. I can give you the examples of ANTS, AEGEA, Copa Energia. We have had a superior investment. If I look at the aggregated portfolio, what happened? We have a situation that the portfolio with the investments that were done over the last 10 years, they have a return that is higher than the previous one if we hadn't done the investments with lower risk. So we improved in 2 dimensions, the portfolio is lower. The second comment that I wanted to do with addressing the question of Robson, our invested companies that had a performance that was superior to what was expected, they compensated a lot the invested companies that didn't have an exuberant performance. So if I look at the return for the shareholders on the aggregated portfolio, we have returns of 2 digits, and they're very close to the financial markets. We have the diversification, volatility. It is the main idea when we close this pricing process. I think Vicente discussed this. I think that we could execute very well the plan by the board, and we want to structure investments, platforms, and we are happy to find these platforms in good partners. So when we diversify, there is more challenging times, but it's important that we can bring a relationship of risk return that is better, which will leave the shares of Itaúsa in a better position. So updates, very good. Congratulations on the evolution. And Vicente will continue with us, and we're going to do an exchange with Fred. We're going to talk about a clear example of the impact of the associative management in the evolution of an invested, and Fred and Alfredo and Pedro Torqueto, he is the CEO of Copa Energia.
Muito bom. Tudo bem, Pedro? Bom te encontrar aqui.
Great, Pedro. Thank you for finding you here. Well, we are talking about your work. Congratulations at Copa Energia. So I wanted to start our conversation talking to you. How is this partnership with Itaúsa contributed for the company? And can you explain the gains that you had at Copa Energia? Well, Copa Energia is 70 years old. So we were founded in 1955 in Campo Grande. So for 50 years, we had the family as a shareholder, and at the end of 2020, Itaúsa is our partner at the same time that we were acquiring Liquigás, which is, Petrobras purchased it. So it was a state-owned company almost all of our life. And so the beginning of this journey with Itaúsa was very complex from the standpoint of direction, not so much direction, but how the world was. There was a pandemic, and it was a company that was family-owned. 8% of the market share of GLP that acquired a state-owned company that had 20%. So it's a challenging scenario. And we had the pandemic. So we've done all this process of fusion, working with home office, and working with Itaúsa, this is fundamental for the success that we've reached since the fusion. So a lot of the focus that we've had and that we committed to doing with the shareholders, everything that Itaúsa adds, not only adds trust to the market, but the rating of credit that we had, but amongst the management of the day-to-day with the governance that they imposed, and how that helped us to have a training all throughout the process. And I joked that in the beginning, I took on as CEO this year, but as VP of Strategic Operations, my life was from one committee to another, and how that added throughout this journey. Even Alfredo said, well, in the audit committee, we're only going to stop when we have a lot of trust and there is a lot of resilience in the numbers. And that passed on to the entirety of the corporation. Vicente and Alfredo, they're the members of Itaúsa that are there, and they're very diligent. And even though it's a close relationship, they give a lot of autonomy to work the day-to-day of the company. And they add a lot of knowledge in the areas that are the specific knowledge of Itaúsa, the investments, the financial structure, the day-to-day follow-up, and the governance. So far, so good. The marriage has been great in the last 5 years. Pedro, can you tell us how is the current moment of Copa Energia and the sector where the company is inserted in regards to challenges and opportunities? The distribution of gas is very resilient. People continue to cook, industry continue to operate. When we look at the segment, we separate it in two parts. We have the B2B that we sell to the reseller that sells to the final consumer, and then we sell also the industrial installation of the gas, and we work directly with those clients. On one side, you have a growth that is aligned proportionate, and on the other hand, you have Copa Energia. When we did this junction, there were affinities. When we follow the state scrutiny, we have a different dynamic in the company with a lot of synergies that we really seized more than in the beginning. And we have the relationship with the wholesale clients, and we had a mix that was focused with the wholesale and the retail that brings an average margin that is better for the distributor. So it's a resilient sector with a lot of opportunities and a sector that demands scale, so you can be more tempestuous when you have more scale. We seek the scale, and we are seeking to grow in the natural gas market. We have challenges on the one side that there is regulatory divisions that are being discussed at the National Oil Agency. We're discussing the best practices in the world. We believe that we're going to get a good regulation that here in Brazil, and that's why the natural gas gets where the mail doesn't get, or the electric energy doesn't get, but you have a gas bin, and that's connected to the returns that you're going to have. There is also in the regulatory, you can use the gas for other uses, for the generation of electricity. It opens a lot of opportunities. The gas is a fossil fuel, but it emits less greenhouse gases than a diesel. So we could substitute these energies that are more pollutant by an energy that is cleaner. We have an opportunity. So we can see that the natural gas has its resilience and can still grow a lot in the residency, as we have the social programs, Gasto Povo as well. It's a program that is focused in the substitution of the wood by the bottled gas that will improve the environment and the health of the population, the time that the population will use for people to work, and children can study and not collect wood. It's a study that we've supported, and that will bring a lot of growth for the sector. In general, we live a good moment for this sector. And that's why we're a benchmark in the world for the capitalization and distribution. Oh, Vicente Alfredo, there is another one. I think that Pedro can discuss on the new avenues that the company are using, new synergies, so we can be less dependent of the natural gas. There is an organic growth, and we have some news to share, right? Well, the first 3 years, Copa Energia is not Copagás and Liquigás, it became Copa Energia. We focused on synergies, ERP, joining these companies, and we didn't leverage the companies, and we started this journey 6-7 times leveraged, and now we should finish 1 time lower, and then we open several opportunities for us. On the one side, we have 13,000 sellers of our products that get into 10,000 houses in 10 months, 30 million houses daily. It's not the same house that purchases the bottled gas, so we get into 30 million houses, and we work with the 30,000 companies, so we can deliver energy for these clients. and we've done the approval at the board of directors of the avenues of growth that we saw as opportunities. We did the natural gas investment, focusing in biomethane. We really believe in biomethane to capillarize what would be natural gas, biomethane. We see that this market has a potential, enormous potential. It will come over the next year, 5 years. We had the approval of the board so we can acquire this molecule. Another investment that we've done was G-Link, which is a natural gas liquefied that one buys the gas, the other compresses the gas, and you can take the products 1,200 kilometers away from the plant, so you have a capillarity of the product. We have an operation on the port swap to give more resilience on the infrastructure project with the two other partners, so we can have another product in the northeast of Brazil where we've grown. We have these verticals. We have autonomy in seeking the opportunities. In general, we want to service the clients with less greenhouse gases. And we can understand the demands of each of our clients so we can deliver the added value product. So what is your vision for Copa Energia? Well, a comment Pedro mentioned on the standpoint of working with Itaúsa. So we have GLP, we understand that this is a cleaner matrix, more sustainable for Brazil, but on the other hand, we are attentive and we are seeking other opportunity. We have other modals of energy as well. We like what we do, we are proud, but we are not going to rest on our laurels. Well, a vision that we have aligned, we do an acquisition, we only get into the business if it makes sense. And if the other business is the best for us to be with Copa Energia, I think that my family and Copa Energia really learn with Itaúsa the addition of partnerships and what that brings to the client, to the company. So in the company that we have 36%, GT Link, the other is invested value. We can do this learning curve with this. The road, we worked a lot to be where we are. So we want to look at what the client demands and bring in this product in the most efficient way possible. And on our side, we don't have the need of you controller, and of course, you need to service the client very well, but we have a focus in the needs of the client. And what I see in the future of Copa Energia, we can provide energy consultancy for the clients and better service them. So if the journey of the client is decarbonization, I'm going to offer a product that has less greenhouse gas. If their journey is cost, I can indicate some of the products that has a lower cost for their specific need. So once we are positioned and we are with this client, we can study and get into the value chain. The example is the terminal that we have in Swap. We have the distribution, we are very well distributed, so why don't we have an infrastructure so we can give resilience? And this can happen with biomethane. So our strategy is to position ourselves where we have strengths and then look at the opportunities within this value chain. So what does Copa Energia does to keep this? Well, in this sector, we have innovation. We focused in innovation a lot. Even a few energies are not so mature. the biomethane is not mature. So Milton was talking about the partnerships of Itaú along with the universities. Copa Energia was a pioneering company in doing the partnerships with the universities for studies in GLR. Well, the GLP, but GLR is the gas of renewable effect. So we are looking for paths of the production of GLR, which would be an energy I can get it into the equipment of the GLP, and I don't have to create an investment in capex and infrastructure because it's going to buy the same fuels that I have in there. Brazil has an enormous capacity, and we're a company that is looking at 70, 140 years down the line. And how can we add these new energies that will have a long-term future? So we look at our competitors, and they understand the sector that we are in. They understand our competitive advantages. We're very well positioned all throughout Brazil. We are a brand that has top of mind. We are working with our strength to gather more clients and continue to be a leader in the sector of GLP, of natural gas. It's important for our leadership, but adding portfolios, and we can bring a competitive differential in regards to the, well, we know that it's with good partners and the competency of our team, we're going to have success and we're going to deliver the results that we've delivered over the last years. Thank you very much for your participation, Pedro and Vicente. If you want to complement something. Maybe the last comment is we are convinced that the maintenance of a regulatory framework that allows for competition that is fair amongst the players, we're going to be the big winners in this market. We're going to get market share, we're going to generate value, we're going to contribute with a social inclusion program that is very important. Thank you for your participation. You are welcome to the new studio, and we can receive you. And well, if you invite us, we'll be here. Thank you. Well, with their presence, we've seen the advancements and the vision of future of Copa Energia, and we translated very well what it means to Itaúsa to get its values in action. Values that are done for people and by people. What gives value to... Well, people give value in Itaúsa. In Itaúsa, we invest in shares that transform Brazil. And that starts in-house. We create an environment that stimulates those that value those that place our values in practice. We're one of the best places to work. And we continue to evolve with ethics and diversity. If you want to continue with this conversation. Well, that's it. In the end of the day, Alfredo, Itaúsa continues to be made by people, for people, and the holding is very proud to receive for the 5th year the seal of great place to work, and to recognize the best companies, to have the best practices for the management of people, and to retain talents is in the DNA of the holding, as you see. Certainly, Juliana. And we are a holding company, not operational, so keeping talents are more important and involving the people in their analytic capacity to contribute for the investment and the post-investment. All of that has been done with a lot of attention, and we try to get a good environment of work prioritizing the health of people with a policy of home office, 2 days at home, 3 days here. So we try to work with this issue with training of the new development of people and having an environment that is inclusive so that people feel comfortable. Whatever their belief, their lives are, a collaborative environment. We're very few here. It also doesn't have 100 direct employees. So it's important that the team works in an integrated and collaborative way. So we've managed to retain and attract people and to have a positive environment. And all of that gets us in a position that is very good in regards to the research environment in the company. So we're at the end of the live. And before we have a message that Alfredo is going to give us for the, well, Itaúsa is going to do an investment event at B3. Well, we're scheduling an opening event at B3, at the B3 Arena. It's an arena of 150 people. And we are going to publish this over the next weeks. And we will invite some of our investors to take part live of this event that will be in the B3 on December 1st. So pay attention and we will inform you on how we will choose the people that can take part there live. Well, pay attention. Those of you that are investors of Itaúsa, you also have reasons to celebrate the 50 years that went by and many other 50 that are still to come. And speaking of that date, we have to capture the QR code of the satisfaction questionnaire. Please help Itaúsa improving the panorama for next year, and you're still going to get, if you fill it out and if you're the first 200, you're going to get the book of the 50 years that is very beautiful. And you get it at home. And I remind you that Itaúsa keeps contact with you through the channels. You have to enroll, and now we got to the end. So the last message that I'd like to give in recapping everything that we've seen today, 2.5 hours that are very intense, a lot of information, participation of people, but reinforcing. Itaúsa is a big holding, 50 years of story, a lot of legacy, a lot of innovation, a lot of adaptations to the scenarios, working with sustainability, with the solid and long-term vision. All of that makes Itaúsa a company that is admirable. And we're very happy to have the 900,000 direct shareholders that trust us in the capital allocation and the way that we work with the invested companies. We extract the value with solidity. This is a way, a set of values that are very important. And we have a good policy of distribution of dividends. And with everything that we built over the last 50 years and over the last 10 years, we diversified the investments. We created value, and we have a perspective of future of believing in Brazil and having a perspective that we can have within Itaúsa the best talents and the best investments for our investors that trust us and trust our values. So I want to thank you and Itaúsa for being here in the first Panorama, and now I'm at the 50 years. Well, thank you. It's great to have you here with us, and
Obrigado você
Muito bom.
também.
É que são os valores em ação.
Isso aí.
These are the values in
Obrigada
action.
por você estar aqui com a gente, né, junto.
Well, thank you for being with us along with Panorama and the holding, which is a source of pride for all of us.
Ótimo dia, uma ótima
Have a great day, and we will see you on the next one.
Falar de Itaúsa é falar de consistência e legado,
transparência,
responsabilidade,
respeito,
sucesso,
Uma marca forte.
sustentabilidade, referência e robustez.
Sustainability and a reference in robustness, credibility, perennity, excellence, solidity, trust, integrity, and story. We are a big manager of big companies, achievements and a lot of learning, ethics and a legacy for the positive impact for the society, receptiveness, and to work with passion, solidity, inspiration, pride in taking part, emotion, and future.